Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 3rd of November. Today we have some updates, so let's start. And today we're going to start with north, with LPR region, with this area. There are no changes on the front line. On the front lines, the Ukrainians made few attempts trying to penetrate the Russian defense orders near the town by the name of Krasnorechenska or Chervonopopovka, as the Ukrainians call this town. And as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians were moving from Tarskoye bridgehead, Zarechna, Yampolovka in direction of Nevskaya, Makeyevka, these towns from the south to the north. And they achieved some success during their attack, but later, when they was out of reserves, out of manpower, they started the movement of their reserves from Tarskoye, from Terny, from this area. And meanwhile, the Russians moved their artillery and pinned down the Ukrainians in this area and attacked them heavily. And as a result of those attacks, the Ukraine lost around 200 soldiers killed, something around 120 soldiers wounded, and something around 21 vehicles they lost during those attacks. The Ukrainians were trying to develop this offensive operation using three tactical battalion groups, but as you can see, during this battle they lost something around one battalion, one infantry battalion during that attack. At the same attempts they were trying to make on the north, at the same areas, trying to attack Kuzyomovka, trying to attack all these towns on the north west from Swatovo. And as a result of those attacks, the Ukraine lost around 130 soldiers and something around 700 vehicles. The Russians reported that the Ukrainians sent their foreign forces, some foreign volunteer battalions in this area too, to be more precise, but they couldn't achieve any success as well. If we are talking about the front lines from Seversk to Donetsk, Ivanovka, Konstantinovka, Bakhmut, there are no changes as well. There were no updates about any attempts from any side. So for now, I believe that there are very heavy clashes in a town by the name of Bakhmut. We got more and more pictures and videos from this area, but without any changes on the front line. If we are moving to the south to, let's say, Novobakhmutovka front line, there are no changes as well. So the front line are stable. If we are talking about Donetsk, as you can see, the picture hasn't been changed since yesterday. Town is under very heavy shelling. Today we got some updates about losses among civilians, casualties among civilians. If we are talking about the progress, the Russians reported about two progress in this area. First, they were talking about Avdiivka front line. The Russians managed to develop their bridgehead near Spartak from this area. Not much, maybe just a few towns or a few buildings, or a few streets they managed to take, nothing more. And there is no reason not to think that maybe the Ukrainians will be able to push the Russians back during the next 24 hours, who knows. But for now, just a small progress. The same situation in Marinka. According to this map, we see that the Russians control, let's say, the red territory, this area in Marinka. And according to this map, the area between the gray line and the green line is the gray zone. But today the Russians reported that they managed to penetrate a little bit the Ukrainians' defense orders, and that they managed to reach this road, this road and the territory that located on the east side from this road and till this area on this side of the river is under Russian control. Not much, but as we discussed, Marinka is a very well fortified position, and it's a very big success, we can say, if the Russians managed to take control over this area. Also, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours, as a result of those attacks along the front line, the Ukraine lost not much, around 80 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. If we're talking about the South Donetsk area, the Russians reported and confirmed that they are stuck that their progress is very slow and that they are not able to develop their offensive operation because of weather. It's the first factor. The second one is that the Ukrainians managed to move the reserves and they managed to stop the Russians. The Russians are not saying that they're planning to give up or to step back, but they're not confirming this. But they're saying that they will try to continue, but the progress is going to be very slow. In Pavlovka, and today the Ukrainians made some kind of counter-offensive operation because the Russians are trying to encircle Vuhledar and they're trying to attack using two roads. The first one in direction of Pavlovka and the second one from Nikoilska in direction of these mines. This very nice fortified position. And if the Russians are able to take control over this area, of course, we can say that Vuhledar is going to be encircled. But for now, the Russians is just like around this territory, and the Ukrainians made counter-offensive operation in this area. I'm not sure about success, but the Russians are saying that Ukrainians couldn't achieve any success and were stopped and pushed back to their previous positions. There were no updates about Novomikhailovka, so I believe that the Russians are still preparing trenches fortification around this town, trying to prepare offensive operation for the upcoming periods of time, if they are planning to do anything like this. And that's it about this area. If we are talking about, by the way, there was another attack, another counter-offensive operation from the Ukrainian side in direction of, let's say, Vremivka tactical bridgehead, but the Russians reported that they stopped the Ukrainians and pushed them back. If we're talking about Orehov, Gulay Polya, there are no updates from this area. The only thing that we need to discuss is that today there were some kind of prisoners exchange in this area, 107 soldiers from the Russian side for 107 soldiers for Ukrainian side. And that's it from about this area. As you can see, there are still a lot of updates are coming from Kherson district. The Russians reported they managed to prevent some terrorist attack in Energodar that Ukrainians were planning since spring. They didn't give more details. I believe that soon we're going to receive more information. But for now, that's it. And if we're talking about the Kherson offensive operation, counter-offensive operation, the Russians reported that Ukraine lost around 80 soldiers and something around 13 armored vehicles. And this is it about the global scope. If we are talking about some interesting moments from this territory, from this front line, we need to discuss two important things. The first one is that today a lot of Russian military expert Telegram channels were talking about the things that there is a town hall in Kherson, this is the capital of this region, and a lot of people noted that the Russians took off the national Russian flag from the town hall of this town. And they asked a lot of questions, why is that? Furthermore, the vice president, we can say, of this territory today reported officially that according to his understanding of the situation, the Russians are planning to leave this bank of the river. And this is very interesting because it's official position of let's say of high level authorities from this territory, and he reported that according to his understanding of the situation, the Russians are planning to leave this area. You need to understand that all these people are from Russia. They support Russia and they are supported by the Russians. And we need to understand that these peoples can't say anything from their own side, from their side. Believe me, if such people are saying something, that means that they were told to say this. And a lot of experts are saying that the Russians are trying to prepare some kind of trap in Kherson, trying to force the Ukrainians to start grand offensive operation in this area, because the Russians are prepared. They are prepared to meet the Ukrainians and to reduce them as much as possible, and the Ukrainians understand that. But the thing is, if we're talking about the Ukrainians, and if you take a look at this map, you see that there are at least, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 icons saying and showing about the actions that Ukrainians made during the previous 24 hours. They destroyed some kind of a mobile cell tower and reduce the cell phone capabilities in this town. They were attacking using HIMARS rockets the dam in the Novokakhovka Dam, the bridge and pontoon bridges. So the Ukrainians decided not to attack, at least to take a small pause and to use HIMARS rockets and to attack this area. And of course, this is not good for the Russians. This is not about their plan, because for them, it's much more better if Ukrainians started counteroffensive operation, because if the Ukrainians are able to continue like this and to attack the Russians and this area using HIMARS rockets, of course, in a month or two, in a three, they will be able to achieve success. And anyway, they will be able to destroy warehouses, to destroy checkpoints, to kill the soldiers, to wound soldiers. And of course, these tactics brings losses for the Ukrainians. This, we can say that this is almost the same tactic as the Russians are using, let's say, in Bakhmut, when they reached the town and now they're just bombing and shelling this area without attacking this area. And the Ukrainians do have losses in Avdiivka, in Vodyana, Opytne. The Ukrainians, it's very difficult for the Ukrainians to bring artillery very close to the front line, because there is Donetsk and the Russians has better positions with artillery. And what they're doing now, they're trying to ruin this territory without attacking. Or if they're attacking, they're doing very small steps, trying to take maybe a few hundreds of meters and to push slowly the Ukrainians. And now the Ukrainians are doing the same thing in Kherson. They're attacking this area using HIMARS rockets without pushing, trying to reduce as much as possible the Russians. But the Russians, they do ready for upcoming counteroffensive operation from Ukrainian side. And if we're talking about the Ukrainian officials, today we got a lot of reports from some kind of Ukrainian media people who were talking that the Ukrainians are no longer able to start any counter-offensive operation on any side or on any front line, trying to show that maybe it's some kind of trap from the Ukrainian side, who knows. But this situation in Kherson is very difficult. It's very difficult, and I see that the Russians are not doing some kind of important decisions. To tell the truth, it's my own opinion, of course, but if I were the Russians or were able to make some kind of decision, I would already start building at least some tunnel under this Dnieper river. I understand that it would take a lot of time to build some kind of tunnel under the river, like to stable supply and support road, but nobody says that this conflict is going to be ended in a month or in a two. So the Russians don't have the real supply and support roads of this area. They don't have these possibilities, but from the other side, they are not doing anything. They're not trying to solve this issue, or the way how they're trying to solve this issue, trying to build pontoon bridges or restore the bridges in this area is not enough, because it's not a very big deal for the Ukrainians to attack these bridges with the HIMARS rockets. The only thing that the Russians are doing, they're making some kind of media sphere in this area, trying to say that we are leaving this area. They're taking off the national flag from the town hall. They're forcing the vice president of this region to say that the Russians, probably the Russians, would leave this territory. They're making some kind of fake information that the Russians have already left some kind of checkpoints in this area. So this is the only thing that they're doing, and we understand that the main goal of all this situation is to force the Ukrainians to start counteroffensive operation, where the Ukrainians will be reduced to ruins and destroyed. But as we can see, the Ukrainians are not so stupid. They understand everything. They have the visibility of this area. They see everything, and they're not starting. They're doing their job, attacking this area using HIMARS. So that's why I believe that the Russians need to change. We know this. If you are doing something 500 times, and if all these things bring the same result, you need to change something, and the Russians for now are not changing anything. I believe, my understanding of the situation, that the Russians need to find another solution how to supply and support this area, because if the Russians need two things they can do. The first one, they need to push the Ukrainians from Kherson for more than 200 kilometers. Let's calculate the distance. Let's say this is the bridge, Antonov bridge in this area, so the Russians need to let's say 100 kilometers. The Russians need to push the Ukrainians on the distance of 100 kilometers. For these purposes, they need to take towns like Nikolaev, like all this area. And if they're able to do this, of course, in this case, I believe that Antonovsky Bridge will be safe, will be on the safe side. The Ukrainians won't be able to destroy this bridge with the HIMARS because the Russians will have enough of time to shut down the rockets. But in this case, the Russians need to start counteroffensive operation, and they need to destroy a very big Ukrainian army in this area. And for now, the Russians are not able to do this. Yes, they want the Ukrainians to attack first and on the defense position to reduce the Ukrainians, and after that start counteroffensive operation. But the Ukrainians, I believe, they're not planning to do this. That means that the Russians need to change something. And the only thing they need to do to be on the safe side, to support this town, Kherson, to bring food, to bring water, electricity, to supply and support with ammo, shield, they need a safe road. We understand that the Russians are not able to use the bridges, pontoon bridges. It's a joke in this situation. This solution doesn't work. So that's why they need to build something more stable and that can work for a very long time and to be safe. And the only thing that comes to my mind is that the Russians need to start building, let's say, tunnel under the river. I'm not an engineer, I'm not like a professional guy in this sphere, but yes, we understand that it will take a lot of time. But as I told you, nobody says that the battle for Kherson is going to be ended in a month. Everybody are saying this, that the Ukrainians will start with the Russians. But something tells me that maybe we are going to see this configuration of the front line maybe till the end of the next year. Who knows? Nobody knows. So for this reason, and if you want to be on the safe side in a year, so that means that you need to start doing something yesterday. But the Russians haven't started doing nothing. If you remember, the Russians solved the issue with Crimea with this bridge easily. They built the bridges between Crimea and the Russian Federation very fast. They have this power, they have this capability, and I believe that they are able to. Of course, the Ukrainians will attack the engineering constructions and everything they have just to slow down the Russians, but this is the only solution how to be on the safe side. And furthermore, if the Russians, and of course, and the next thing, if the Russians want to force the Ukrainians to start counteroffensive operation in this area, they need to show something that if you are not going to attack, then we will do something that after that you won't be able to do this ever. First, the Russians were trying to blame the Ukrainians that they were preparing some kind of dirty nuclear bomb and that they were planning to destroy the dam in this area. As I understand, that was some kind of speculation, because nobody destroyed the dam, there is no evidence about the dirty nuclear bomb, and even if the Ukrainians have this bomb, I'm not sure that they are going to use this bomb, at least for now, because there is no need to do this. But if the Russians, let's say the Russians tomorrow will, or Putin, the president of Russian Federation, will say that from now on we are going to build, because of the fact of attacking of the bridges and so on, from now on, we are going to build a real underground tunnel that connects, let's say, Kherson, the east side of Kherson with the west side of Kherson. They can start building this, let's say, tunnel somewhere here. Let's say it's just like to end this building somewhere here. And believe me, and if they bring some equipment and they will start doing some job for these purposes, believe me, in less than a month, the Ukrainians will start counteroffensive operation. First, the Ukrainians will try, let's say, to attack this area using HIMARS. Everything they have to attack this area, trying to attack the workers, trying to attack the some vehicles and so on, of course, to slow down. For these purposes, the Russians, of course, are able to bring some, let's say, anti-aircraft defense systems and so on, and they need just to understand that they are able to shut down the rockets. And as soon as they are able to make a safe sky above this area, and as soon as they are able to show even media progress that they are able to build tunnel, believe me, in a month the Ukrainians will be forced to attack and to start counteroffensive operation, because they also understand that if the Russians are able to build something like a tunnel in this area in a year, then they won't be able to take this territory ever, because the Russians will be able to move reinforcement, food, supplies, support, money, everything they need. They will be able to bring in this on this region. So even from the perspective of making some kind of trap, the Russians, it's, to tell the truth, I believe that even my daughters are not going to believe me. The Russians, if they're just taking off the flag from the town hall saying that we are leaving this area, now we're taking off the flag. Now the Ukrainians have information about this area from satellites, and they see the Russian forces in this area. So it's not the deal about the flag. So the Russians need to prepare something more smart, something more specific and something smart if they want to force the Ukrainians to start. The thing that I discussed with the tunnel is not, maybe it's not a great solution, but at least the solution that the Russians should provide should be something like this. It should have some timings. So, and let's say if the Russians are able to achieve something in some period of time that will bring them some significant bonuses, the Ukrainians will start attacking immediately. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.